Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted that number 1 would be the Taylor Swift thing, number 2 would be the Smashing Machine, number 3 would be One Battle After Another, number 4 would be Avatar The Way of Water re-release, and number 5 would be Gabby's Dollhouse, the movie. And I only got 1 out of 5 of my predictions right for this weekend. Obviously, it was the obvious one. And nobody else got their predictions right either. Some of you got closer than others. One movie in particular did not do as well as I thought it would have. We'll talk about that in a little bit, obviously, but nobody got their predictions right. The one thing it seemed like everybody could agree on, though, is that the Taylor Swift thing was obviously going to be number 1, and it's the only weekend it's going to be number 1, unless they say they're going to bring it back for next weekend. But I mean, they promoted that it's only going to be a 1 weekend thing. It's kind of specifically tied to an album release. It's not like the Eras Tour where it's like it's a concert film, you know? So I don't see it doing that. But I was also wondering, like, what's the comparison going to be to the Eras Tour? Obviously, this is a completely different thing. It's going to make some money, but what's the comparison here? It opened about 60 million below what the Eras Tour movie did. So it opened to $33 million domestically. Worldwide, it is at $46 million. There's no budget listed for this thing. I'm not sure how much it cost to put it all together, but I'm going to assume it's fine because Taylor Swift is a fucking like mega billionaire or whatever and doesn't necessarily need any more money from a theatrical release. Also, it seems like from descriptions, maybe I heard this incorrectly, it's just a bunch of visualizers. Where like maybe we'll have a short little clip of Taylor like explaining what the song might be about or something like that, but it's mostly just visualizer. Is that kind of what it is? Anyone who's seen it? I don't know. It needs domestically 147 million to catch up to the Eras Tour run. But obviously, like I just said, it's only out for this weekend, so it's not going to make any more money, at least in the theaters. And then worldwide, it would have needed 215 million to get there. So yeah, this is definitely, it's not as appealing as the Eras Tour one. Obviously, they're completely different things, but obviously it still was the winner for the box office this weekend, making more than real films. You know what I mean? And look, here's the thing. I'm glad for people that had a good time, right? If you're a fan, whatever. And I think I talked about this even when the Eras Tour came out. I was like, you know, I'm not really a big, like, I don't really know much at all. I know like maybe a handful of songs from her. But I'm glad that people went to the theater, you know. It seemed like a good move just to help out theaters, you know what I mean? Keep the business booming over there. So any help for that, cool. If you get people together. It is weird. Once again, if the description I gave is inaccurate, then I apologize, but I heard wrong. Obviously, this isn't something I'm going to see, you know what I mean? But if it really is just like, just like you listen to the songs in the theater and you're just seeing like the same footage looped after like 5 to 10 seconds, you know what I mean, over and over again, like you're essentially just like watching YouTube, if you want those like vignettes of her like you're just watching YouTube but on the big screen. I don't know. I mean, look, we don't need to dive too much into like the, you know, capitalist nature of like, you know, you release an album, wait a little bit, here's the deluxe one, or here's the different version you could get at a Target, or, you know, insert any other store here, record store day, whatever. This one has a different single on there, you know what I mean? Or yeah, just the fact that she does, it seems like, is it every year at this point? Like, or at least it feels like it, at the very least recently, it feels like every single year you're getting something, you're getting a lot of stuff. This one's from the vault. Like, these are reject songs that I've decided to record anyways and give to you know what I mean? Like, there is also a part of me that the cynical side of me, you know, that also wants to say, despite the things that I was saying that's, you know, good for theater business, whatever, and if you're having fun seeing people dress up and talking with them, having fun with them, whatever, but then there's that other cynical side of me that's like, man, if this really is the thing that's getting people into movie theaters, then there is something that is a little sad about that. You know, like, this is what will get people into a movie, not real movies, this. And it seems like the, you know, people behind this, not even just like her, but like her team, whatever. They seem very aware that it's probably this easy. Anyways, number 2 was One Battle After Another, holding on a little better than I thought it would, making 11 million, adding to a domestic total of 42 million. So for PTA, it did become his highest grossing film domestically. It outgrossed Boogie Nights by 16 million and There Will Be Blood by 2, and then worldwide it had a bit of more of a boost there. Now sitting at 101 million worldwide, it outgrossed There Will Be Blood by 24 million. So both domestically, worldwide, it's PTA's highest grossing film. That's pretty spectacular, and obviously people are still going to look at the budget of this thing, 130 to 175. Just because you crossed over 100 million worldwide doesn't mean you're in the clear. You still got to get past these other numbers, right? But like I was kind of saying last weekend, it's PTA's highest grossing film. This is a big accomplishment for him personally, and I'm happy for that. And it definitely seems like with the word of mouth, and even though it's not like the domestic weekends are like, oh my gosh, they're still in the 50s, you know what I mean? It's like, it was at 22 last weekend, now it's at 11. It's a pretty good hold, all things considered. It didn't drop off drastically. Word of mouth seems to be strong on this thing, and also award season will be coming up soon, where people will continue to check it out. If it's not in the theater, they'll check it out at home, you know what I mean? So I feel like the greater benefits are going to come later. You don't necessarily have to be so hyper focused on the budget in this case. Like, this isn't like the Avengers where they need that. They need that box office success, you know what I mean? They need that for validation. Number 3 is The Smashing Machine. I thought this would be number 2, and I think I even said last weekend, that damn Taylor Swift, taking away an easy win for The Rock. But maybe it would not have been at all. Like I just said, One Battle After Another, had a pretty decent hold from its opening weekend, and this movie only made 6 million. And you can only blame Taylor Swift so much for that, It could be a thing of like A24 just maybe didn't market it as much, where people knew it was like definitively coming out, you know what I mean? So you got the Taylor thing. Maybe it was like A24 marketing. Maybe some people genuinely are sick of The Rock. Maybe some people aren't necessarily sick of him, but just didn't have any interest in this. I don't know. Interesting. I'm not sure, but it definitely opened a lot lower than I thought. It opened to 6 million, which is the lowest wide release opening for The Rock's career. I know Southland Tales is technically lower, but it's almost like that barely grossed anything in its overall run. I feel like it was in limited theaters. But as far as like wide releases, this is officially his lowest. It's 2 million below his previous one, which would have been Faster. So just to compare, like his best opening weekend ever was Moana 2 recently, and that's about $133 million difference. It did outgross Southland Tales domestically by 6 million, but it needs 17 million till Faster. Because of the Oscar potential on display here, I feel like this isn't a movie that's gonna go away. Even if it doesn't get nominated for a lot of other things, I feel like The Rock probably will get nominated for Best Actor for this. So people will be paying attention to this, but clearly it's not going to be as much as maybe I had thought. This is also on a budget of 50 million, which it turns out isn't that great. For Benny Safdie, at least, it is 4 million over Good Times domestic run, but it needs 44 million until it catches up to Uncut Gems. So I feel like, usually when you make like a biopic or like a sports biopic thing, whatever, it almost seems like that's like the more commercial safe bet. But in this instance, I guess that's not the case. Technically, this is Benny Safdie's highest wide release opening. But technically also, if you look into Uncut Gems, because Uncut Gems had like 2 or 3 weekends where it was like in limited release. But once it did get a more wide one, it opened there with 9 million. So although that wasn't its official wide release opening, because it took a couple weekends to get there when it was out in theaters still. But technically when they did start to open up, Uncut Gems had a higher opening. And then even on the weekend after, it was at 7 million, which is, believe it or not, higher than 6. So yeah, I'm not sure the longevity of this thing anymore, because there's a part of me that's like, there's no worldwide totals to really bump it up right now. I feel like The Rock will be getting some Oscar buzz and people will want to pay attention to it at some point. But as far as like theatrical longevity here, getting past that initial production budget, I don't know. I don't think it's going to hold over well. Like it's not, I don't think it's going to like miraculously rebound once Taylor leaves. You know what I mean? I mean, that could happen, but but it's also like we got Tron next weekend, and I know some people are maybe questioning, how well Tron will do just based off of history, but it's still like that is like the big blockbuster that some people are curious about more so than the Smashing Machine, right? So we'll see, man. But yeah, definitely a lower opening than I thought. Number 4 is Gabby's Dollhouse, making 5.2 million, adding to a domestic total of 21 million. Worldwide, this is kind of funny. It's now sitting at 32 million, which is the initial production budget of the film. Technically, it needs a lot more until it's in the clear, right? Like at least double that budget, maybe closer to 100 million worldwide. But I mean, I don't know. I think they're in a pretty lucky spot that they crossed over their initial production budget number at all, This kind of being a movie that is made for like a very niche, younger audience. So, oh well, I have nothing really else to add there. Number 5 is The Conjuring Last Rites, which I also kind of don't have a whole lot to add to, but it's still good to talk about. Made 4.05 million, adding to a domestic total of 167 million. So for the 2025 year in horror, the distance between this and Sinners is now 111 million, but we've already talked about how worldwide it's already the highest grossing horror movie of 2025, so doesn't matter. Domestically is just the one part. Worldwide is the whole thing combined, Speaking of worldwide, it is at $458 million there. So I don't know if it has the momentum to quite get to like $500 million worldwide at this point, but I mean, it is just 42 million away. So it could just inch so close to it, which is pretty cool. Number 6 is Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, making 3.5 million, adding to a domestic total of 124 million. And I wanted to look at the year of 2025 itself because I saw an interesting stat, so I wanted to, list it out here to talk about. It has outgrossed Dogman by 27 million. It's behind Final Destination Bloodlines by 14 million. So domestically, it is currently the 15th highest grossing domestic run of the year. But then worldwide, since it's at 633 million, it has outgrossed F1 by just 6 million. It's behind How to Train Your Dragon by 2 million. But once it gets that extra 2 million, it is in our top 5 highest grossing worldwide runs of the year of 2025, which is once again just like pretty incredible that this movie, is doing so well in both places that it's just inched up there. Sometimes these movies do really well, but this, it almost seems like really unprecedented in a sense. Number 7 is Avatar: The Way of Water re-release. So it did crack the top 10, but it's not enough to get into the top 5. I guess that makes sense, sure. It made 3.1 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of 687 million. So the distance between Way of Water's overall grossing now and the original film is 98 million. That's kind of crazy. I kind of forget that it got pretty close, at least domestically, to getting to the original Avatar. And I don't know if anyone ever thought, I don't even remember if I thought this one was going to make more than the original, but it's like, it's pretty cool that it got close enough, because that first movie, boy, that was a box office juggernaut, continues to be. They keep re-releasing these things, right? Worldwide for this movie, it is now at 2.330 billion. So that's 593 million away from the original. So closer domestically, not so much worldwide, but still closing it up. And then we still have Fire and Ash 2 months from now, opening up on the same kind of like release strategy. So I'm also very curious. This is a shorter release gap, obviously, than 09 to 2022. So I'm curious if Fire and Ash will get like the same amount of closeness that Way of Water got, or if that's gonna like be a bit more of a drop. I don't know if it will though. I feel like it's same release strategy, and I feel like it's just that thing of sometimes you don't really know what people are gonna flock to the theater to see. You never really know what's gonna be a big hit, but these Avatar movies always seem to be. So that'll just be more interesting when that movie's officially out. Number 8 is The Strangers Chapter 2, making 2.8 million, adding to a domestic total of 10. They have still yet to outgross Prey at Night for the franchise. Now they're behind it by 14 million. And there's still no significant worldwide total to bump it up. So I don't care. This clearly is not holding over. Still, it's just like continuing to descend here. Good. Don't spend your Halloween with the strangers. Don't spend any Halloween with strangers. Get away from strangers. You know what people should see though is number 9, which is Good Boy, which although there is no, exact production budget listed, the fact that it did make 2.2 million ain't too shabby for an independent film, you know what I mean? Sure, it may not have cracked the top 5 or been like a bigger surprise hit like that, but 2.2 million for an indie is still something. Just getting any kind of like recognition or notice out there is pretty good. Obviously, I was, hoping, crossing my fingers, maybe just the marketing campaign of like, it's a dog horror movie. Maybe that would have caught on because, the spike of Google interests and like, does the dog die in this movie? There was a spike there. Maybe there was some attention. Some people might have been more curious. It's on their radar more. Not enough to get into the top 5, but, 2.2 million ain't nothing. So any kind of attention is good. Check it out if you still can. And then number 10 is The Long Walk, making 1.7 million, adding to a domestic total of 31 million for Francis Lawrence. That places it 15 million away from Red Sparrow. Yeah. It's his lowest grossing film domestically, and then worldwide it is sitting at 40 million, which is exactly the doubling point of its 20 million initial production budget, but still 76 million away from Water for Elephants. So domestically and worldwide, this is Francis Lawrence's lowest grossing film. I think we're gonna, since it did exactly double its initial production budget, it's probably, safe to say that it's like it's fine like financially, as far as like a break even point. I feel like there will be like a small profit off of this as far as like theatrical, and hopefully there's like a bit more of a cult following once it hits like video on demand and Blu-ray sales, and more people check it out. Then it just goes on to have a life of its own outside of its theatrical run. People already love it, critically and fans. So yeah, once again, I was just kind of hoping that word of mouth would have been so strong as far as like how bleak it is, but how great the actors are. Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. You gotta see what they did. One of Stephen King's best adaptation. And yeah, I think I was hoping for a little bit more, but I'm glad anybody saw this movie. You know what I mean? Hopefully hopefully it continues to live on after this. Now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, I do think will be Tron Ares. Number 2, I think could be Roofman. Number 3, Soul on Fire. Can't rule out the, weird uplifting movies that kind of catch you off guard. But I see posters of it in like my Regal and AMC, so I'm like, okay, well, they're getting the word out some way, right? Number 4, I think will be One Battle After Another, and then number 5, The Smashing Machine. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.